know I can depend on my barber to give me the perfect haircut every time. I respect his skill and commitment to his job. He is proudly serving Jamaica with his talent. Respect is also due to my bus conductor. He ensures that I am not left behind and I get on board safely. He is serving Jamaica steadfastly and honestly. It's good to see the police protecting and reassuring with courtesy. She is proudly honoring her pledge to work dutifully in the service of her fellow citizens. My journey through life is unfolding every day. I rely on a lot of people to help me to progress along the way. My family, my friends, and my fellow Jamaicans. With their support, I have a future in which great things are possible. I pledge my heart forever to serve Jamaica, our shining homeland, with pride.
Up Yout is powered by National Baking Company in association with CranWata, a Stanley and Empress Production, giving the youth a voice.
And so we come to know these youths and show these youths. Talk up yourself, the youths to know them roots. Nurture them, protect and love and hear these youths. Music make them know I love we show these youths.
Mr. Save the youth, I kill the youth, I talk up youth, I build the youth, I trick and fool and pill the youth, I talk up youth, I build the youth, empower and then skill the youth, I talk up youth, I build the youth, talk up youth in Jamaica, we are
kill the youths there.
Talk up youth in Jamaica.
Hi, I'm Gemmar, a filmmaker, musician, and entrepreneur. I'm CEO of a company called Gemmagination Studios. In the future, I will be the very proud owner of both a Grammy and an Oscar, casually. And I do believe and have the intention of making my company one of the biggest production companies in Jamaica, in that, not even from a money-making perspective, but that we are producing high-quality content from yard, for yard, to abroad, wherever. This is my story. I grew up early childhood in Kingston. Father was a preacher, and his work takes him around the island. So our start was in Kingston, a few years. This is where we kind of grew our creative spirit, in that we used to be at home doing nothing a lot of the times. We'd watch TV and then start making things up ourselves. So we'd see guns on TV, and then we tried to make water guns, homemade water guns. One time we made a car and a spaceship out of cardboard, staples, some masking tape, and spray paint. So that was the height of our creative introduction. Then we moved. I went from Kingston to Spanish Town, where I did, I think, most of my development. I grew up in the church, so we start with the choir, and then you get introduced to more music, and we used to have to wake up and go to music classes, which as a kid was terrible. All the other kids got to watch cartoons. We had to wake up and go to some guy's house and learn to play the piano. But I'm very grateful for that skill now. And further in Spanish Town, I started learning guitar off of YouTube, and then somebody from the choir would come and give me extra lessons. But I don't do well with constructs, so I just stuck to teaching myself guitar. I guess there was a bad taste in my mouth from piano, but I loved my piano teacher. It was great. Anyways, we went through that whole period of trying to find yourself, and I think we got a great start in the church. This was around the time that I started going to art in high school, the creative melting pot of Jamaica. Let's just admit it, guys. That's just who we are. So that's where I started most of my video work. I used to do these funny skits way before IG comedians became a thing. I used to put on the wig and do all sorts of foolishness, and people knew that as the Gemmar show. But then you grow up and you cringe and you delete everything. So we moved on from that, and then the school started to ask me, hey, we saw one of your videos, do something for the school. And so I started doing more of that until it got to a point where I got my first big money job. At the time, I was doing film with a good camera phone and a broke-up laptop. But then I started working with Junior Achievement Jamaica and USAID from Arden Links, which enabled me to buy a new laptop. A couple years later, my mom bought me my first camera, to do events, make money. And it just went from there, it just skyrocketed. We started to see that, film is a lucrative field. Now, this was also around the time, sixth form, where I learned of my bipolar disorder, although at the time, nobody knew what it was. You have some people saying demon possession, it's Jamaica. Some people saying, no, he's schizoid. Some people saying it's just a psychotic break. And so that's the thing with mental illness. It's not always apparent from your childhood. Sometimes it just happens. Some people think it was triggered by that time I was hit down by a taxi in front of Arden. I flew up in the air, fell in a gutter. My friends had to carry my lifeless body down to Andrews. We had to force the taximan. No, they had to force the taximan to carry my body. He was trying to get away from the scene. Anyways, I went through all that. I got a wicked bump on my head. I broke my leg. My clavicle was broken. All sorts of foolishness. But just the type of person I was, I kind of cope with comedy. So when they were cutting the sweater, I'm like, oh my God, no, that's my favorite sweater. People were laughing. I was just trying to make light of the fact that my life has just taken a turn for the worse. That was a character building moment. But still, people look at that and say, it was in his gene pool, but maybe that triggered it. So that's a possible explanation, but nobody really knows. It took a couple more years until I got the proper diagnosis. And even then it was iffy. Mental health is at a point where there's still a lot of experimentation. We're still coming out of the dark ages. People mixing up this with that, and medication mix up all the hullabaloo. But what I found very interesting is I actually had a very good background. I had good people in my life, good friends. I was a nerd, but nerds have the best friends, let's be honest. Popular people in high school have a lot of drama, but I'm still friends with the same 10 people from back then, the same people who put me in the taxi, you know what I'm saying? So it's very important as somebody with a mental health issue that you have good people around you, not yes men, not people that just want with you for the money or the hype, people that genuinely know, say, you are not like that, why are you acting like this, I'm blessed to have people in my life beyond family and friends that are looking out for me. I'm talking about mentors like Kurt, Big Nala. These are people, not even that, IT. When I met Mr. Bignall, I was kind of on a downswing, came out of one of my episodes. I was like, oh man, let me just try and do normal stuff. Went into his office and he began to ask me about what I'm doing now. And I said, I'm into video production, but I'm just like, I don't know if I should be, it's kind of stressful. And then he was very interested. He was like, wow, I'm trying to do a commercial. But law firms don't really advertise. And I'm like, well, I'm a dreamer. So he took me on, even though I've never done big budget commercials before. He gave me a huge budget and I made some magic. And that's how I started my real start in terms of my film career. And that was just last year, December. So I got my big break there. And I was on a roll. I was taking my medication. I was going to my psychiatrist, started working with stars, started working with Tessan. IT would call back, Bambino and all this. So it was getting very exciting. And as we said before, that's dangerous for a bipolar type 1 person. So I became manic. Now my family are amazing. They can tell it easy, which is why I never go and leave my family, no matter how far I get in life. They can easily say, all right, Gemmar is getting so and so. How are we going to deal with this? Da, 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 da. So they're planning their own thing. Meanwhile, I'm off in my own world. These are the people that you want to engage, not just professionally, but engage them on a personal level. You don't always have to work with people that are for you like that, but you need to be aware of who is for you and who is just looking for your work.
In Jamaica.
There is no other bun like this one. The flavor is so good. Who say bun can't sweet? Oops, mind you bite your finger.
National spiced buns, baked with national pride.
My wow moment.
My wow moment.
My wow moment.
CranWata with wow. That's my wow.
That's my wow. Yeah. What we do? Watch out.
My wow moment when I get the highest in my class. That's my wow. What's with wow?
When we get 16 at maths, I never expect so much. That's my wow.
CranWata with wow. When school over, I'ma get forgot me out. That's my wow.
Water with wow.
When I get my back food, that's my wow. CranWata with wow.
Water with wow.
We have to build the youths there.
Up Yout in Jamaica.
So the thing about being bipolar type 1, it's not just either therapy or medication, it's a good balance of both. But bipolar people tend to downplay the medication side. We think it's, changing us for who we are. So the best thing is to, even the base, if you're not getting therapy, take your medication. For me, it was a long journey. It's not like you have a one-size-fits-all, like you go and you get it and you're like, all right, fine. Sometimes it's years of finding the right one for you. Right now, I'm just on 3. I used to be on more, but that was more for the, injuries and stuff. So 3 solid, and then it's not like it stays with you for life. As you get better or worse, you can either lower the dosage or increase the dosage. But at the end of the day, as I said, it's not a cure. You have to deal with your traumas. You still have to deal with all sorts of things that trigger you. So yeah, but the best thing, especially if some people don't like talking or therapy, take your medication every day, all the time, for the rest of your life if you have to. So we've just discovered I have bipolar type 1, different from type 2. Type 1 means you get manic. Bipolar was previously called a manic depression, but they separated it. There's 2 types. Type 1 is manic, type 2 is depressive. We know depression is, I couldn't even imagine having the depressive side of it, but that is where you're more on lows. The episode revolves around you getting depressed and suicidal. Manic is a bit more scary and a bit more what you'll see in popular media as, like the Joker or those characters. Bipolar isn't really it's not psychotic, it's more emotional. It's just like, if you as a regular person feel sad times 5, a bipolar person will feel it times 100. We're manic, we're creative, we're innovative, but we can go off the rails. It's a blessing and a curse. As a creative, it's kind of advantageous sometimes. You can stay wired, you can get a lot done, but if you're not on medication, if you're not taking care of your mental health, you will carry off the edge. Stress is a big trigger for me and for a lot of bipolar people. Sleep is a huge one. We're notorious for being able to go hours and days without sleep, which is dangerous for even a normal person. For a bipolar person, your brain is making its own cocaine to keep up with your mental energy. And when it does that, it creates a thunderstorm in your brain. And the less sleep you get, the more the thunderstorm grows, because sleep is a time for rest and rejuvenation, but we're so wired, we literally can't sleep. So you'll get a lot done, but then you'll start having delusions and such like. My first episode was the worst. I had hallucinations, I had delusions. I couldn't tell when I was sleeping from when I was awake because I have very realistic dreams. I used to have night terrors. So, but even reality was still kind of like a dream state. It was very strange. That was the deepest, darkest part. I mean, I was never suicidal, but at one point I'd considered that, because not as, oh my God, life is terrible, but out of desperation, like, all right, maybe if I kill myself in this dream, I'll wake up in reality. However, you don't know which one is reality. So I kind of just tried to go for it at the time. Very dark stuff, but it gets better. As you grow older, I think 20s and teens is like the height of the illness is ugly, like rearing its ugly head. That's when it's the worst. I guess because that's when you're coming into your own. And so, all that stuff. We're more stressed, we have more responsibilities, more pressures. And for a bipolar person, really and truly, we shouldn't be multitasking. So I was trying to go to university, and at the same time, I was trying to run a business. So let's say I started my business in 2015. I'd say the business didn't really start in earnest until late 2016, 2017, because of where my focus was. I was like this room. I had one foot in school, the other foot in my business, and it was tearing me apart, you know. As I said, stress is big, sleep. University students are notorious for going with terrible sleep schedules, terrible eating, exercise is important, and then we have to start doing the medication. Now, even that is a journey because you will start off with one and it doesn't work for you at all, and you have to keep experimenting until you find it. You know, we spoke earlier about medication. For me, it was the fact that I'm a high-functioning person, and some of the medications would make you drowsy for hours during the day. And you know, you wouldn't get much done, you know, client calling, where's the video? You know what I'm saying? So it's an experimentation, but it's also important that you sleep. So even if I didn't like being on medication that makes me sleep, if I wasn't on that, I would just not sleep. And as I said, any human that goes past a certain amount of days without sleep, you will lose it, okay? So I finally found my right medication, found the right dosage, but the problem is it's not even hard and fast. If you're in a situation where you're gonna get manic, where you have a big, exciting shoot, you know, you probably wanna up the dosage because we can't get too happy, we can't get too sad, we can't get too depressed, can't get too manic. We can't be too anything, and we're notorious for being too everything. Well, I am fresh out of a downswing, and I'm picking myself back up. The important thing about this is you allow yourself to rest, allow breaks, but you can still do amazing things. You can still run a successful company if your team is strong. While I was in hospital, my team shot a commercial without me. My crew knows my brand and knows what I'm about, so even if they do something without me, it's still gonna have that energy, that edge, you know, that Gemmagination Studios flair. So my latest experience, I learned to grow. I learned to let go. I still have hope. You know, everybody that I work with, thankfully, are very good people. This is why I have to be picky with my clients, because if they don't understand that you have a slight disability in any way and they pressure you and they don't care about you, you have to make the decision. You know, am I going to let them send me to work 21? Am I going to let them make me lose my mind? Nothing, no amount of money is worth your mental health. There's a priority list and health is up there. Then we can think about family, then we can think about friends, but you can't help people if you can't even help yourself. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Some of us have on shades, so I can't too see it. It's another problem with Jamaicans. We're very afraid of our emotions and getting vulnerable. We grow up with the bad man thing, or if you manage to have very, you know, learned parents, you can grow up enlightened. But you have to understand that some people grow dark. I came face to face with the darker side of Jamaica. For safety concerns and legal concerns, I can't really go into it, but some people might realize from certain features of my physicality. I ran into some very violent people, and you know, it shook me. People need to know that not everybody you come across is okay mentally, not even from a mental health perspective. Some people might be a little depressed, some people might be sad. We all need to be aware of our traumas, aware of where we're coming from, and understand that not everybody grow like you, not everybody have it good like you or bad like you. But still we chug on.
We have to build the youths there.
Up Yout in Jamaica.
Wait. Take a bite of National Giant Hardo. Nothing comes close. How do you hardo? Bread and patty? Bread and butter? National Giant Hardo bread, baked with national pride.
When you're ready.
Ready? Oh, wait, my time to fall off.
Ready now?
Come and get new bundles and makeup now. That's my wow. Water with wow.
Just get that song, pull up, yes. That's my wow, water with wow. Roach man there, water with wow. So the way of me when we reach a foreign.
And when the plane touchdown in New York, that's my wow. Water with wow.
We have to build the youths there.
Up Yout in Jamaica.
Hey Kurt,
Gemmar.
been a couple weeks, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you snuck into the studio.
Yeah man, free of cost. They're expensive. But yeah, let's talk about film. Let's talk about the industry.
This whole thing is about mentorship and that sort of thing in the first place.
Okay.
The reality is, I was talking to a friend just last week, and he's in the States.
Okay.
And he does camera work. And I made a joke to him about, this is a guy I went to college with.
Okay.
And I jokingly said something about, oh boy, you need to come down and, you can't come PA for me or something like that. And I was just kidding. And his response was, oh man, nah, like I'd never go back to PAing, son. Like you couldn't pay me to... let me explain.
I have mixed feelings about that.
You see, whenever somebody like a Maxine Walters is ready to do one of her shoots down here, and it's for like Usain Bolt or somebody like that, or an international cruise coming down, I AD, I direct, I've been doing this for like close to 15 years. You had best believe I will pick up and I will go and PA.
That's the thing.
Not for any and everybody, but if you feel like you can learn something from the person who is offering you the position, go
and
ahead
I think that's a culture difference.
If I wasn't willing to PA, I wouldn't have worked with Idris Elba last year.
Really? Come on. Why?
Because the reality is I ended up going onto his set, and if you're just taking it on paper, when he came down here
that's what he's saying, yeah.
I didn't direct Yadi, you understand what I'm saying? I wasn't even the first AD, and I didn't want to be the first AD. I wanted to be the third, which is a very difficult position in itself, but it holds a lot less responsibility in terms of paperwork, in terms of whatever.
You liked it.
It was one of the best things that I've ever worked on.
So did you actually study film? Not necessarily in the traditional sense, but you took the time to read up on theory about film.
I've learned more outside of college than I believe I actually did in college. And college was a good experience, but not everyone can afford to go to college either.
Okay, there you go.
And the information is available and it's out there. And if you take the time to actually look for it.
We're in the information age.
Exactly.
Like you can literally learn a craft on YouTube.
The reality of the industry, especially out here, I think in the States you have the luxury of being able to focus on certain things that you want to. Maybe not all the time, but the reality is if I could run to B&H and rent a red this weekend to shoot something, I'd shoot my next project.
Right.
But out here, you end up in situations where it's like, what do you need done, sir, that I'd like to work with?
Right. I specifically wanted to start from back in 2015 when Gemmar put on this bedazzling film festival, and all of the people in the industry vets were just like, this is terrible. Oh, they're not. And I was just there like a kid in the candy store, like, wow, look at this. Wow, it's a rich guy from LA. I don't know what he does, but like he looks rich. So, you know what I'm saying?
That may have been part of the problem. That you don't know what he does.
Probably it.
There was two main problems. They brought down a lot of people from LA.
They did.
And I think one of the things that we as Jamaican filmmakers need to realize is that you can learn from almost anybody as long as they have common sense and they're doing stuff that you actually admire. The issue is though that LA people have LA plans and they've gotten there through a LA way.
What's an LA plan?
The fact of the matter is that a lot of the questions that were asked by the local filmmakers, which are fair questions like, how did you get to where you are?
They literally said move to LA. I remember that.
Exactly.
I remember that. That's not
everybody's answer was, well, I moved to LA. Well, I slept in my car trunk for a couple of days and then I moved to LA. And that's the thing. But the issue is, unless as a Jamaican you're prepared to pick up and move to LA, it's not as cut and dry. And this happened, if you remember, it happened for camera people, it happened for actors, it happened for...
I thought it was just actors.
Exactly. Well, everybody there who asked that question of, in terms of setting up a production company, how do you get an agent? How did you pursue your acting career? But what I really mean is that at the end of the day, someone who is living a completely different experience from you, it's like finding a really rich person and asking them, how do you survive from day to day?
And if they started middle class with 100,000, whereas Spanish Town
got a small loan from his dad of $1 million, you know what I mean? Like that's no one else's reality. No one else gets the call at a small loan. You get me?
A couple people.
But we're not them. You understand? And I'm saying that the Jamaican industry on a whole, that's not them. So unless you have some rich uncle or friend or whoever who's going to invest not just their time.
That was my mom. Money. She bought me a 1500 US camera, first ever. So maybe that's another thing. Maybe we can even just look to our relatives and friends, like get them to believe in. I kind of feel like when people say, they hear you say I'm a filmmaker, they kind of like, but what do you do for money though? Like, but it's still a lucrative industry. It's a very lucrative industry.
But you have to keep in mind that when you turn around and maybe sometimes you don't work for a full month, or you're not on set physically earning a paycheck for a full month. It's like either you're being bombarded by jobs and you can't take on everything,
and then,
or you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs, kind of waiting until the next.
But then you're not even twiddling your thumbs. When you're not doing commercials, you're trying to do actual content, actual film.
I am, but again, keep in mind that that content
That takes
comes
money.
out of my pocket from the money that I may have made or may not have made from doing whichever commercial, whichever music video. They're going to run us off of their camera.
It's all good though. It's all good. As long as we make them some nice commercials.
At the end of the day, Gemmar, all the best to you.
All the best to you too. Let's see who makes the action feature first. Let's
Sorry about the times I said I was fine, I was lying, my life is a raging fire. See, I would act okay, but I was feeling pain, cause me and my own brain were fighting. I'm sorry for disrupting, publicly erupting, bringing dark things to light. But this is my affliction, emotional decisions fueled by my sleepless nights. Cause I was off my medication, full of frustration. I said, how could I be crazy? I feel so amazing. This led to my own demise. Cause I was off my medication, full of frustration.
There are people out there that are going through things. I know that this is a show that they're not doing this to kind of leech off of you. They understand that, you know, there's a message that needs to come out. Mental illness is very real. It's just that it's not as tangible as money or blood, sweat, tears. It requires you to look at a person beyond their skin, their blood, sweat, and their tears, which we have a hard time doing because when we look in the mirror, we have a hard time looking at ourselves and our emotions. You know, to be aware of all the people around you, prioritize your support, take your medication, and just go after your dreams carefully.
No one understands you.
Up Yout is powered by National Baking Company in association with CranWata, a Stanley and Empress Production, giving the youth a voice.